A lot of slides. I don't have any slides.
We have you.
Um, I'm a writer and an actress. My name's Cass Collins, if you don't know. And the title of my talk today is really just losing my religion. I think it got expanded into losing my religion after 9/11, and that's true. And I'll talk about that, but I want to give you some background on my religious life and that of my family, for context. My grandfather Morin was raised a Catholic. His faith was anchored in family going back to our roots in Ireland. It was a faith that could get you killed there and elsewhere at one time, but his family carried it with them when they immigrated to America. When he married my grandmother, she was 17, pregnant, and a Protestant. The child produced by
3 strikes and you're out, huh?
yeah, the child produced by them died and was buried on his first birthday. My grandmother converted to Catholicism. Maybe it was her penance for her imagined sin. But she raised 3 children after that, Catholic, even as her marriage foundered. I remember hearing it said that converts are the strictest Catholics.
Yeah.
My mother was sent to a Catholic boarding school when she was 5, boarding school run by nuns. She suffered many misfortunes there at the hands of the nuns. She often told us about that. And she was miserable, of course, without family. Her mother, too, was miserable at home. She suffered multiple miscarriages until when my mother was 9 in 1934, a healthy baby girl was born, Mom's sister, Eleanor. My mother was enlisted to raise her. She was considered by my grandmother, Eleanor was, to be the holy reincarnation of Mother Mary. And later, when Eleanor had her first child, Jennifer, who was born on Christmas Day, that myth was cemented in the family. 2 years later, their brother George came along. So the 3 children, Jane, Eleanor, and George, with a very dysfunctional mother at home and an absent father. In 1930s Pittsburgh, the church was the only source of community and support, especially for families like mine. It educated your children, kept them from their devilish ways, punished them if they strayed, fed them when they were hungry, clothed them when cold. The church was good. Good as God. Somehow my grandmother survived divorce without excommunication. I don't know how. She was a good Catholic to her death. I remember her taking me to church as a child. At that time, the Mass was in Latin. I followed Grandma's lead on when to kneel and when to rise or sit. The cathedral was huge, and streams of colored light from the stained glass windows slanted across the nave, illuminating dust motes in the air. The pews were hard, but my belly rumbled with hunger. I watched my grandmother walk to the altar and kneel before the priest and drink from a chalice. When she returned, she knelt and prayed, her rosary in hand. My grandfather came from a family of 9 siblings. At family weddings and funerals I attended as a child, prayers were said so often that I learned them by heart, even though my mother never took us to a Catholic service that I can recall. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou amongst women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners now and at the hour of our death. Amen. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. By the time I was 3 years old, my mother had taken me and my brother Chris to live in New York City, to live. Our parents were divorced, and Mom was estranged from her mother. We were no longer practicing Catholics. But when she tried to enroll my brother at Holy Name School in Manhattan, the priest asked her why he should accept him. You may have lost my soul, Father, but you still have a chance to save his, she told him. He was enrolled that day. I saw my extended family comforted by the rituals of the church time and again. Most of my great aunts and uncles went to Mass every day. The Mass of Christian burial was said for each one as they passed. Their children were baptized and married in the church. My mother's early experience in boarding school and a later troubling encounter with a priest soured her on Catholicism. But when she moved us to New York City, she joined the community church on East 35th Street. She was active in civil rights and the Democratic Party, and community church, a Unitarian Universalist fellowship, aligned with her values. We were not a secular household. We celebrated Easter and Christmas with gusto. When we encountered clergy in public places, we always greeted them with deference as father or sister. It happened a lot more than you might think when we moved across the street from the Cathedral of St. John the Divine. When I attended an Episcopal middle school, I went to Mass there on Thursday mornings and took communion regularly. At community church, we learned about world religions. I was most drawn to Judaism as a young teen, but we were not being indoctrinated, only educated. Our Reverend, Donald Z. Harrington, was well connected to political and civil rights activists, including Dr. Martin Luther King. Our youth minister, Dr. Leonard, marched with King in Selma. Langston Hughes came to community church once when I was 11. I heard him talk, and I bought a copy of his book, The Sweet Fly Paper of Life. He signed it, "To Cassie, sincerely, Langston Hughes," in his elegant, large handwriting. I was thrilled to meet a live poet. Ossie Davis and Ruby Dee were frequent guests of the church and sang together on special occasions. My brother Chris and I went to Homestead, the Unitarian youth camp in Mahopac, New York, for several summers. There we went to chapel, where a Quaker-style service was held every week. We'd learned about the Quakers in Sunday school. Religion was never imposed on us, neither was it ritual. At camp, I met Kara, who also attended community church, and we've stayed friends to this day. When I decided to marry, I chose Dr. Leonard to be our minister. I hoped he had forgotten the time I stopped him in the community hall at maybe age 10 and asked in my best Mae West impression, "What's that, a gun in your pocket? Are you just glad to see me?" I had no idea what that meant. But he took it in stride. Many years after our wedding, Dr. Leonard was a guest at our annual anniversary party. He also led the funeral services for my brother Chris and later for my mother. I was never sure I believed in God. Once in a discussion with my mother, I told her I imagined him to be a tall, dark figure in dark robes. She was surprised and told me her image of him was as a kind man in white robes with a long white beard. I was struck by our differing images, having been educated the way we were. As Unitarians, we spoke of Jesus as a philosopher, a spiritual holy man, but not the actual Son of God. And we did not believe in resurrection or in practice communion. Religion was more about a sense of community for me. Community with my extended family who were Catholics, and a community with my church, which was Unitarian. The concept of heaven and hell never motivated me. My morality grew from experience more than from scripture that was based on a sense of humanity being one. Dr. King was a morality figure in my mind, and reports of his marital indiscretions did not diminish his authority in my mind. They just showed him to be human. When my brother suffered from addictions, he eventually turned to AA. There he joined a community of people who believed, necessarily for themselves, in a higher power. Chris accepted that power as coming from God. I know it helped him to stay sober after many failed attempts. After he died, he spoke to me once. I was walking past the bookcase in our home that held his photograph and got this sense of being drawn to it. I ignored the feeling a few times until finally stopping and saying, "What do you want?" He said, "I'm here. I'm okay." 4 words that I will never forget. I felt comforted. He was telling me, I thought, that he had survived death on earth and was in a safe place. That was all I needed to know. When my family bought our house in Narrowsburg, my daughter was 9 years old. She was a curious child and drawn to social issues already. We found the Unitarian Fellowship, and I told her about my experiences in church and in camp. We went to a few services and we liked it. I started to think that my church was the best church. The people were thoughtful and kind to each other. They talked about important issues and walked for social justice. It was very much like the community church of my youth. My daughter and I stayed active in the fellowship for a few years. In the city, we lived in Lower Manhattan on the west side. On the first day of school in 2001, I walked with her to the corner of Chambers Street and Greenwich, where she turned to walk the next blocks alone to her new middle school. That was the first time she would walk alone. I watched her red hair bobbing across the pedestrian bridge over the West Side Highway and turned to speak to a friend who was running for city council and handing out literature on the corner. Just then, the first plane went overhead and crashed into the upper floors of the World Trade Center. Moments turned into days and weeks. We fled the city for our home here, but eventually returned to our neighborhood, which smoldered for months after. I don't need to tell anyone how the world changed that day, but my world changed in one measurable way. When it was determined that a religious sect had conceived of the murders that day, I remember thinking back to my belief that my religion was the best one. And I thought, that's the problem. They believe the same thing about theirs. I never needed religion to tell me how to live, but the community I found in it felt like a good way to be in the world. Since losing it, I've had to build that framework for myself elsewhere. Thank you for listening to my story today. It's good to be here.
Maybe we'll open the meeting to anybody else who wants to make any comments or ask any questions.
Any questions or reactions?
Reactions, what have you?
Discussion?
Sharon.
Hi, Cass. Haven't seen you for a long time. It's wonderful to see you and to hear your story. Thank you so much. I do remember that you went, I thought, with your daughter down to Louisiana when Katrina hit. Am I mistaken, or was that true, that you were so, you were so Unitarian or so, but you were so human that I think that's what I remember, that you went down there with her. Is that true?
Yes, that's true, Sharon. Yes, we went
Yeah.
down. She went down many times.
Mm-hmm. That was a wonderful thing that you did. I hope that you did something good for at least one person who would see that somebody would do something so caring. That was just a marvelous thing. I also remember after 9/11 that you had this anger, and I said, wow, I don't know what I feel sometimes, but I never registered as anger. I don't know what I register things as, but I remember knowing that you said that you were so angry, and I just was wondering, such a depth of feeling that I felt terrible, and I was, everybody was something. We were all there. We were in New York at the time. But anger was one, and I was just curious about if that motivates a lot of what you do, or if that was just a one-off, you know, even if you remember ever saying that.
You know, I was really in shock for much longer than I recognized um, after that event. I wish we had just come here and moved here permanently at the time, because it was very hard living in that neighborhood and walking through that neighborhood and taking our children to disrupted schools. And it was just a very difficult time for us I mean, my God, all the people who lost their lives. I don't remember the anger per se,
Mhm.
but I believe you. I would not.
Yeah, it always struck me because I thought like, you know, sometimes, I think sometimes we don't know what we feel. But you actually said it. I said, oh, well, I could see why that would be. Though I was just dismayed and broken down. I could, I live directly across in Red Hook, of course. And as you come down the main street and turn left onto to the neighborhood, the World Trades were always right in front of us. So I say, and I used to say before it, oh my God, look where I live. I was greeted by those two buildings every time I came home. And then after that, I could never put my face in that direction. I just avoided that completely and just, so, you know, I don't know what to call that, you know, I never named it. I just know that it was so difficult and so horrible. And I think the world is much changed, and I think we're still paying for so many things that went from that point on in every way. So maybe your anger was correct and a good thing. I don't know what I was feeling. It wasn't good. It wasn't good.
One of the things that I remember thinking, and I believe it was that very day, walking back home, and being absolutely traumatized because I saw much more after that first plane that I don't want to think about. But um, one of the things that I thought very clearly was, well, now things will have to change. I thought this is an expression of, you know, inequality and frustration with the way the world works, and we'll have to do something good from it. And of course, that never happened.
Yeah.
And I feel so naive for thinking that, but maybe it was a good thing to have that thought in my mind.
As I said, we have to remember all the good people in the world and surround ourselves as best we can with them, because it's our only chance to survive all of these feelings.
And when you mentioned Katrina, um, I met so many wonderful people in New Orleans who had lost everything or almost everything. And I remember a woman, especially, whose house we were rebuilding, and pulling kitchen cabinets off the walls and putting up sheetrock. And she and her family, after we'd been there a couple of days, drove up in a pickup truck filled with barrels of gumbo and and you know, jambalaya and everything just to feed us.
Wow.
And it was just a wonderful, wonderful feeling to be accepted and, you know,
Well,
welcome.
thank you so much, Cass. It's really good to hear from you. It's good to see you.
It's good to see
Parts
you.
of the family, yeah.
Nice to see Tom too.
Yeah.
And
Told him
Mike.
you were, he's told him you were on, so he said, I'm gonna go see her. It's great.
That morning, I was working at a inpatient rehab, drug and alcohol rehab in Middletown. I was the admissions coordinator. Uh, and part of what I did many mornings was drive the state van down the street to pick people up from the non-medical detox unit up the street, people who were not in withdrawal, who were ready to come into rehab. And I got out of the vehicle and heard somebody on the porch say that and they had TV there. We did not have TV in the rehab. They said they were what? They said that one of the towers just fell over. That's how he described it, and that's when it hit me, the severity of it. Um, I took the people who were ready to go, I took them back up the block, and the reactions of the patient community were mostly like what we would describe ourselves. But I remember one woman who had, I think, had just arrived from Central Harlem Crisis Unit, and her reaction was yes.
Oh,
And I never had an opportunity to discuss that with her. I'm sure somebody did, because she was in the program. Um, and that was her emotional reaction initially. I don't know if it's sustained, but it impressed on me that it was not unanimous. Our feelings were not unanimous.
no. Yeah,
Guys,
sure.
I'd like to say something and I have to go because I have to have lunch, get dressed, pick up 3 people for the funeral. But Cass, my son-in-law, is an actor, Holter Graham, and he and my daughter lived on West 16th Street. And he ran down, both of them ran down to help out. My daughter had just finished her PhD. So they sent her to Chelsea Piers to do intakes, which of course never materialized. He contracted lymphoblastic leukemia exactly 9 years after the event and fought for his life, was lucky to get to be in Columbia Presbyterian. And then he had a bone marrow transplant at MD Anderson, and a guy flew out from Germany with the bone marrow. So he has done extremely well after fighting for his life for 8 years. Never got a penny from the government. Fortunately, because he was an actor and had very good insurance, he managed to do well that way. But the only thing they said was if the bone marrow transplant failed, they would let him do T cells, but they weren't paying for MD Anderson. He'd have to go to Sloan. And as I learned at that point, that different hospitals specialize in different areas of cancer treatment. Like Sloan's great for mastectomy, they're not good for lymphoblastic leukemia. So I thought that was very interesting. But I lived on Long Island. I taught AP World and Global History. 3 of my students' fathers died. And there were plenty of ramifications, but I don't have time to talk about that now. And it was Babylon Village where the train made up, so we lost a tremendous number of citizens. In fact, my best friend's neighbor was the only man, Kevin, who survived from Fitzpatrick. Everybody else in that unit was killed. He stayed home that day because his wife badgered him that he'd never gone to his other children's birthday parties, and it was their last birthday. And that man was haunted, the only one out of that group to survive. He was just haunted. He looked like a ghost for years. And eventually he ended up going to New Jersey and switched over to bonds out of stocks. But boy, oh boy. All right, I'm sorry, guys, but I really have to go. Cass, you were wonderful. And I really appreciate you coming and speaking to us.
Thank you.
Bye-bye, guys.
Yes, no, sure.
See you, Sheila.
Bye-bye. Good to see you.
All right. Thank you very much. You've been very, very moving, very moving speech you gave. All right. I'm trying to find a,
Yeah, I think I lost your page.
no, it's all right. No, I didn't have a page open. I just closing words. Fine. Forgive me for improvising, but I'm trying to find broken words. This is a Buddhist closing words for the service. Be lamps unto yourselves, be your own confidence. Hold to the truth within yourselves as to the only lamp. Douse the candles. All right. So we have, some coffee available, but we did know, I guess we didn't forget to bring some of our refreshments. And, so I guess that's it for the service, and, see you all online, we'll see you all next Sunday. And, take care of yourselves, take care of each other.
Anyone who would like
Thank
to,
you, Stephen.
is welcome to hang around until after the program this afternoon. There will be a potluck at the end of the Stennis Falls program.
It's a long
Bye,
one.
everybody.
Till 2 o'clock. Starts at 2, yes, yeah.
Take care.
Take care.
Oh, I knew she had
Hey,
hospice.
Stephen, thank you for the card.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
Yeah, very, very good. Didn't get into the New Yorker?
No. It was just, something I said to everybody locally.
That's great. Very good. Thank you.
You're welcome. Take care.
Thank you.